So what we'll do now is we'll continue on with our SBS 2008 installation. We're just going to go in and we'll now apply all of our updates. I'm just going to choose to install the updates. We'll let that run, and when it's finished we'll come back and we'll just do a couple of other of the configuration steps on your small business server that you're going to need to make sure that SharePoint services and everything like that is running effectively. So our updates are done, and now we'll just restart. We'll let the updates complete, and you may need to run those Windows updates a couple of times, so when we come back into Small Business Server, if the Windows Update icon appears in the sys tray again, just keep running it until you've downloaded all of the necessary updates. So now we've finished applying our updates. What we're going to do is just run through two steps here with Small Business Server 2008. We're going to run the Connect to the Internet wizard, and then we're going to also run the Set Up Your Internet Address wizard. So we'll just choose Connect to the Internet first. And you can see this is just going to run the process of making sure that the connection from your server through to the Internet is working. So we'll say Next. The network is now connected to the internet and everything's good, so I'll say finish. Next step is to actually set up my internet address, so I'll click here on Set Up Your Internet Address and I'll say next. I already have a domain name that I want to use because I've already gone and registered oeccomputers.com, and I'm going to say that I want to manage the domain name myself. I use an external DNS provider to manage all of that. Discussion about configuring and managing DNS is probably a little bit beyond the scope of what we want to do here, but I'm more than happy to help you out if you're having some challenges on that front. Just contact me, richard.duffy@sap.com, and we'll see what we can do to help you resolve your issues. So I'm going to say next. So what is my domain name? So my domain name that I bought is oeccomputers.com, and I'll say configure. So what the system's now doing, it's configuring my remote web workplace. It's configuring Microsoft Exchange so it will respond to emails coming in at the oeccomputers.com email address. And then it's also going to try and configure finally the internet router and open up those ports we were talking about before. So I'll give this a couple of seconds to go through. So it's configured the remote.oeccomputers.com website. It's configured my Exchange email, and again, this is where you can potentially run into challenges with your router if it can't configure those ports correctly. And you can see if I view the warning details here, and you can see that's what it's telling me. Can't open ports 2580, 443 and 987. And that's okay because I've gone and I've configured that on my router manually with my port forwarding. So that's alright, so I'm going to say finish. And that stage of the setup process is now done. So to all intents and purposes, you should now, if you've configured your DNS correctly, you should now be able to connect to your demo server over the web by using remote dot and then the domain name that you've specified. So in this case, I've got remote dot oeccomputers.com, so I can now connect to this demo server over the internet using that IP address. And so what I'm also going to do is to remind myself that I've completed those tasks. I'm just going to tick the two boxes here that I have done the Connect to the Internet wizard and the Set Up Your Internet Address wizard. Now the next thing that you're going to want to do is to create a SSL certificate for this particular server. Now if all you wanted to do was create an SSL certificate for this one server, you could run the wizard process here. But what I'm going to do is I want to be able to build an SSL certificate that I can use for multiple services. So I want an SSL certificate that I can use with my remote web workplace that's part of Small Business Server. I want an SSL certificate that I can use to secure my terminal services. And also when we set up SAP Business One and the mobility components, I'm going to want to generate an SSL certificate to use with that, so that when I'm using the iPad and the iPhone and connecting to my demo data, I can secure that with SSL. So I want to create a wildcard SSL certificate, and to do that, that's a process I need to do manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through that process using the certificate creation capabilities that are basically in IIS, the Internet Information Server, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to buy a wildcard certificate from a certificate provider. In my instance, I'm going to use GoDaddy.com because that's who I use for all my hosting and domain names. So I'm going to buy a certificate from them and use that. So let's go through that process now. First thing I'm going to do before I start configuring my my SSL certificate is I'm going to just quickly restart my virtual machine to make sure that all the changes that I just kicked in with the wizards have all taken effectively. It's just a little practice that I have, that anytime I've done something major like that, I just like to do a server reboot. So I'll just go in here and do a restart, and I'll tell it the reason for my restart was operating system reconfiguration, and then I'll say OK, and then we'll come back once the server is restarted. So now I've restarted my server and I'm comfortable that everything has completed. So I'm going to start the process of creating my SSL certificate. So first thing I need to do is create a certificate request, because I'm going to need to upload that to my certificate provider in order for them to create the certificate that I need. So in order to do that, I go Start, across into Administrative Tools, and I choose Internet Information Services Manager. I'll say Continue because it needs to start up with administrative privileges. So I'll just maximize that. Again, expand this out, and you can see when I click on my server, in this case OEC SB server, if I look at the different options I have here, if I scroll down, one of the options I have is server certificates. So this is where I create my server certificate requests. So I'm going to double click on there. That opens up my server certificates. You can see I actually have some self-created certificates already that SBS has automatically established for me. I don't want to use any of those, because in order for me to use those certificates, I have to install a trusted root certificate on every computer that's going to connect to this. So all of my clients, if they try and access this, they're going to get certificate errors unless they've installed the special certificate that I've created. By utilizing our wildcard certificate that's been created with an external certificate provider, we don't have any of those problems. So I'm going to create a certificate request. So the common name here is, if I was just creating this for my web server, for example, I might put www.oeccomputers.com. In this case, it's a wildcard certificate, so I'm going to put asterisk for my wildcard.oeccomputers.com. That means this certificate is then going to respond to any certificate request that comes from any machine sitting underneath that domain. So what's my organization? So I'll say it's OEC Computers. My organizational unit, I'm just going to say, well, this is my head office. My city, well, I'm located in Panania, which is a suburb of Sydney. My state is New South Wales, and my country is Australia. So then I'll say next. Now, what kind of certificate do I want? Well, I want an RSA certificate, and I want a 2048-bit length certificate. So then I'll say next. Now it's going to ask me what file name do I want for the certificate request, and I'll call this certrec.txt, and I'm going to put it on the root directory of my C drive just to make it a little bit easier for me to find it, and I'll say finish. And that's now done. So the next step is for me to go onto GoDaddy and take that certificate request and put it up there. So let's do that now. So I'm going to open up my Internet Explorer. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is the default configuration has the Internet Explorer Enhanced Security configuration enabled on the server. This is designed to stop you from accessing websites that might be potentially dangerous without thinking about it. So what you can do is you can either leave that switched on, in which case you'll have to manually add every website you go to an exception list, or you can go and switch it off. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch it off. Now the easiest way to do that is down here on the taskbar. There's a little icon for the server manager. So I'm going to select that. That's going to launch my Windows Server Manager. And you can see first thing I get for this server, there's an option here which is Configure IE ESC. So I'm going to click on there. And I'm going to say for administrators, that's off. And for users, I can leave it on, but I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to leave that set to off. And I know there's nobody else going to be accessing this server except me. So I'll say OK to that. That's now done. And what will happen now is when I open up Internet Explorer, it's now telling me that it's not enabled, which is fine. So I'm going to go to www.godaddy.com, and again you can use any certificate provider you like. I'm using GoDaddy because they're the ones that I've chosen. It's not a recommendation from SAP or anything like that. It's just they're the guys that I use. So I'm going to log in with my account name. Now I'm showing you this just so you've got the complete picture. You've seen the whole process of the setup from the very start to the very finish. So I'm going to go into SSL and security because that's what I want to buy. And then I'm going to scroll down here, and I want a single domain with unlimited subdomains or wildcard. So that's what I'm going to select. So I'm going to buy this for 2 years. So it's going to cost me 183 Australian dollars per year. And I'm going to add that to my cart. And that's all fine. So GoDaddy always asks you if you want to buy additional things, a little bit like McDonald's. Do you want fries with that? In this case I'm going to say no thank you. It's going to ask me again, is there anything else I need to do with my order? Do I want to add a website and so on and so forth? At this particular point, I'm going to say no thank you, don't want any of that. We're going to set up our hosted website later. Alright, so I've got my standard Turbo Wildcard SSL for 2 years. I've got one of those certificates. So that's all good. So now I'm going to continue to check out. There's no specials going with GoDaddy at the moment that I've got any vouchers for. I'm going to check out using my PayPal account. I'm going to use my saved PayPal information. And that's all good. So what I'm then going to do, I've read the terms and conditions and I'm going to place my order. And my order's now been placed, and already I've got a little message telling me that the order is now placed. So what do I need to do next? Now that I've got that that SSL certificate order placed, I need to go in here into SSL security, and what you'll see I have here, if I go up. And I'm just going to actually make that a little bit smaller so you can see a little bit more. Maybe not quite that small. 75%. There we go. And I'm going to go into my SSL and security, go to my SSL certificate management. And you'll see I have a credit here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say use that credit. And it's saying set up a new certificate. And I'll say choose from my credits, and there it is. That's the credit that I've got. So I'll say continue. Now it's going to ask me for the parameters of this particular certificate. Alright, so I've got a new certificate. So now I go in here and choose New Certificate. And the status is it's under initializing. If I go into Manage the certificate, okay. Okay, so I've got a pending credit. So there it is. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to choose Request Certificate.